It was the morning of March 8, 2018. 8 students from Robert E. Lee High School were excited and ready for their geology field trip. They gathered in the school parking lot with backpacks full of supplies, helmets, flashlights, and water bottles. Among them was a mix of nervous energy and excitement. The destination was Robert Barron Cave, a well-known local spot full of mystery and history. None of them could have guessed how this ordinary school trip would take such a dark and dangerous turn. A day that started with curiosity would soon become a test of survival. Before we dive into video, please subscribe our channel. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Among the group of students, one person stood out, Sarah Martinez. At 18 years old, she was the oldest in the group and known for her determination. Sarah wasn't just excited about the trip, she was eager to prove herself. She had a strong personality, always ready to take the lead, and never backed down from a challenge. Her classmates knew she was competitive. Whether it was a school project or a friendly game, Sarah always pushed herself to be the best. That day, as they headed toward the cave, she walked with quiet confidence. While some students were nervous or simply curious about the adventure ahead, Sarah was focused. She wanted to make the most of the experience, to explore deeper, go further, and maybe even impress her classmates and teacher, Mr. Ramirez. He had been talking about the Robert Barron Cave for weeks, explaining its geological importance and complex structure. Sarah listened carefully, taking it all in. To her, this wasn't just a field trip. It was a chance to show what she was capable of, a chance to lead. But in the silent darkness of the cave, she would soon find out that nature doesn't care about confidence or courage. The group arrived at the entrance of Robert Barron Cave later that morning. From the outside, it didn't look like much, just a rocky opening in the ground, but inside was a vast, twisting system of tunnels carved over thousands of years. The cave stretched over 2,700 feet and was known for its narrow passages, uneven floors, and beautiful limestone formations. Mr. Ramirez gathered the students and gave them a quick briefing. He spoke about how the cave was formed, how it had been explored and mapped by professionals, and reminded them to stay alert and careful. As they entered the cave, the world above quickly disappeared. Daylight faded behind them, replaced by cold air and total darkness lit only by their flashlights. The sound of dripping water echoed through the tight walls. The deeper they went, the more difficult the path became. Some spaces required them to crawl, others to slide through sideways. But for Sarah, every challenge felt like a new goal to conquer. She moved forward with purpose, feeling strong and excited. What felt uncomfortable to others felt empowering to her. She didn't know it yet, but every step deeper into the cave was leading her closer to a life-threatening decision. As the group continued deeper into the cave, the excitement slowly turned into tension. The passages were getting tighter, and the air was colder. The students were still joking and chatting, but underneath their words was a growing sense of challenge. Quietly, a competition had started. Sarah's classmates began to notice how confidently she moved through the cave, never hesitating, always leading the way. Some admired her courage, while others felt the need to keep up. Then came a moment that changed everything. They came across a narrow crack in the limestone floor. It looked small, almost hidden, and didn't seem like part of the main path. One of the students smirked and made a comment. "I bet you can't fit through that tight spot." The others laughed, half joking, half daring. Sarah paused for a moment. She looked at the crack, then at her classmates. Her eyes narrowed with determination. "You'll see," she said confidently. "You'll all be shocked when I come out the other side." To her, it wasn't just a crack in the rock, it was a challenge. One more way to prove herself. What no one knew was that this small decision, made in a moment of pride, would soon put her life in serious danger. Sarah slowly began lowering herself into the narrow crack. Her body twisted and shifted as she carefully slid in, using her hands and feet to guide herself. At first, it didn't seem too difficult. The limestone felt cool against her skin, and her helmet gently scraped the walls as she moved forward. She believed she could make it through, just like she had with every other tight space in the cave. But only a few feet in, things started to go wrong. The space became tighter, much faster than she expected. She tried to adjust her body, but there was nowhere to move. Her arms were pressed close to her sides, and her legs could barely bend. Then, all at once, she realized she was stuck. Not just paused or stuck for a second, completely trapped. She couldn't move forward or backward. Panic rushed through her. Her breathing became faster, echoing in the tight space. She tried to push, twist, even wiggle, but the rock didn't give. The crack was closing in on her, tighter with every inch. What had started as a bold move to impress others had now turned into a terrifying mistake. Sarah was no longer exploring. She was trapped, deep underground, alone in the stone. At first, her classmates thought she was joking. They laughed nervously and told her to come back out. But when she didn't respond right away, and then screamed, they knew something was seriously wrong. A few students rushed to her side and tried pulling her legs, hoping it would help. Nothing moved. Sarah was wedged so tightly that even the smallest tug caused her pain. The more they pulled, the more pressure she felt in her hips and chest. Mr. Ramirez hurried over and immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. He had seen tight spots before, but this was different. Sarah's body was twisted unnaturally. Her right leg bent in a way that looked painful and wrong. Her face was tense with fear and pain, her voice shaking as she cried for help. Time started to pass slowly. Minutes felt like hours. The group tried everything they could talking to her, calming her down, pulling carefully, but the limestone refused to let go. Any wrong movement could cause more harm. Sarah's body was cramping, her breath becoming shorter. Fear settled over the group like a heavy weight. What began as an exciting adventure was now a desperate fight to save their friend's life. Realizing the situation was far beyond their ability to fix, Mr. Ramirez made the call for help. Soon, the San Antonio Fire Department's technical rescue team arrived at the scene. These were trained professionals who had handled cave rescues before, but each situation was unique, and this one was especially difficult. The cave's narrow layout, the depth of Sarah's position, and the risk of shifting rock made everything more dangerous. The rescue team treated the operation like a surgical procedure. They moved slowly, speaking calmly to Sarah to keep her awake and focused. They used special tools, small rock-cutting devices, and inflatable rescue bags to create tiny pockets of space around her. Every action was done with care. They couldn't afford a single mistake. Even the smallest movement of stone could injure her further, or block the passage completely. Sarah's body was already under extreme pressure. Her chest was so tightly pressed that each breath required effort. Her muscles were aching, her skin scratched by the rough limestone, and her strength was fading. But hope had arrived. The rescuers were calm, focused, and ready to do whatever it took to bring her back. The race against time had truly begun. The rescue team worked with complete focus. They moved slowly, knowing that one wrong move could make things worse. Using cameras and sensors, they studied exactly where Sarah was stuck. Every small tool they used, cutters, inflatable pads, supports, had to be placed with extreme care. The space was too tight for most equipment. So much of the work had to be done by hand. Sarah, meanwhile, was still trapped in the same painful position. Her ribs were compressed, her legs numb, and her entire body felt like it was being squeezed by the cave itself. Breathing was no longer automatic. It took effort and control. The pain was constant, but what made it worse was the waiting. Minutes turned into hours. The rescuers stayed in contact with Sarah the entire time, talking to her, encouraging her, keeping her calm. Some small rocks were chipped away, and a bit of space was created. It wasn't much, but it gave everyone hope. Every inch of progress felt like a victory. The team worked like a single unit, each person knowing their role. Each second counted. Inch by inch, they were getting closer to freeing her from the stone that refused to let go. After more than 9 exhausting hours, the rescuers had finally cleared enough space around Sarah. The team prepared for one last effort, a careful, final pull to bring her out of the crack. They formed a human chain inside the narrow tunnel, each person steady and ready. One rescuer gently held Sarah's feet, while others supported from behind. With a deep breath and perfect timing, they pulled together. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, Sarah's body began to move. Slowly, painfully, she slid out from the crack that had trapped her for nearly half a day. The entire team held their breath until she was completely free. As soon as she was out, the cave echoed with the sound of relief and quiet cheers. Sarah was bruised, shaking, and exhausted, but she was alive. After 11 terrifying hours underground, she was finally free from the cave's crushing grip. Once Sarah was safely out of the cave, she was rushed to the hospital. Surprisingly, her injuries were minor bruises, muscle strain, and exhaustion. But the emotional toll was heavy. Her classmates, teacher, and rescuers were deeply affected by the experience. What started as an exciting adventure had nearly turned into tragedy. For Sarah, the cave became a symbol of both strength and caution. She had faced fear, pain, and helplessness, yet held on until help arrived. But her story is also a reminder that bravery should never come before safety. One split-second decision, driven by pride and peer pressure, almost cost her life. The lesson is clear. Nature doesn't bend for confidence or competition. In dangerous situations, even the smallest choices matter. Always respect your environment, know your limits, and never take safety for granted. Adventure is valuable, but only when it's guided by wisdom, not ego.